Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm your host, Mark. Today we're going to talk about something that almost everyone has struggled with at some point: procrastination. Why do we procrastinate? And more importantly, how can we stop? So make sure to stick to the end, because we have also added a vocabulary section at the end of the video for you guys to review the new words we used in this episode. Now, I'm not alone in today's conversation. I have a very special guest with me. Dr. James Miller is a psychologist and expert in human behavior. Dr. Miller, how are you feeling? Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I am great. Thanks for asking. It's great to be here and discuss such an important topic. Procrastination affects so many of us. I'd like to give a piece of deep information about this topic so that listeners have a better understanding after watching this episode till the end.
Absolutely, Dr. Miller. I believe all of us have had some form of procrastination. It's like we know what we need to get done, but yet we manage to do everything but that somehow. Okay, so let's start at the beginning and be straight to the point. Why do we procrastinate?
That's a great question, Mark. Procrastination is more complex than being lazy. Actually, procrastination often has to do with the emotions attached to an action. Humans dislike doing something that arouses unwanted emotions like stress, anxiety, or boredom. Now imagine you have to submit a report to your workplace or school. You are fully aware of this, yet starting it all looks too difficult and stressful and just makes you want to escape from it all. So rather than writing that report, you'll find yourself scrolling through social media or binge watching a show on Netflix. The point is that procrastination is not the failure of will. It is actually the avoidance of bad emotions. Our heads are wired in a way that naturally would seek comfort, and when we are faced with doing something unpleasant, we can also go for instant gratification over long-term benefits.
So if I'm not wrong, then it's more about our emotions than simply being lazy or unmotivated, right? It's like we're trying to avoid the discomfort of starting a difficult task.
Exactly, Mark. Another thing to consider is how perfectionism can tie into procrastination. People who want everything to be perfect often delay tasks because they fear they won't be able to meet their high standards. So they end up putting things off, thinking, I'll start when I'm ready, or it has to be the perfect time to begin. But the problem is that time rarely comes, and they end up procrastinating even longer.
That makes sense. So perfectionism can even make procrastination worse because it creates a fear of failure or imperfection, isn't that right?
Correct. And this cycle continues because the longer we delay, the more stressful we feel, and the more we try to avoid those bad feelings. It is like a loop that feeds itself further. Let me give you another example.
That's very interesting. I love it when things are explained in examples.
Okay, imagine that you are preparing for a big presentation at work. You want everything to be perfect: the slides, the design, your speech, even the tiniest details. You spend hours tweaking things, changing the fonts, adjusting the layout, and rehearsing your delivery to make sure it's flawless. You practice multiple times to be perfect, but because you want everything to be just right, you never actually complete the task. You may even avoid presenting the presentation at all because it's not good enough for your very high standards.
So knowing all this, how can we break the cycle of procrastination and actually get things done?
Great question, Mark. That's why everyone is here. They want to know the answer. There are several strategies. I'll share with you some of the most effective ways people break out of procrastination. 1. Divide tasks into smaller chunks. One of the primary reasons we tend to procrastinate is if a task appears too large and overwhelming. This is one of the biggest reasons most people put something off when a huge project presents itself before them, saying, I don't know where to start. But once they break down a project into a series of manageable small pieces, things become much more approachable. For instance, if you have a big essay due, instead of thinking, I need to write a 10-page paper, focus on just writing the introduction or doing half an hour of research about the topic. The small wins can motivate you to keep going.
Sorry for interrupting, but instead of seeing the whole task as one giant mountain, we can break it down into a series of small steps, right? That makes a lot of sense.
True, Mark. Small steps lead to bigger progress. Another technique is the Pomodoro Technique. You work for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. After 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break. This helps you avoid burnout and keep your eyes on the prize. You would be amazed at what you can accomplish in small spurts of focused time. 2. Set clear, achievable goals. It is also very important to have specific, realistic goals. If you just think, I need to work on this project, it is too vague and does not give you a clear direction. But if you set a goal like, I will write 500 words today, it gives you a concrete target to aim for. The secret is to have goals small enough so that you can feel like you are accomplishing them in a short period of time.
I really like the Pomodoro Technique personally. I did it myself multiple times and it helped so much at work. That's a fantastic way to keep focused and give yourself breaks so you don't get burnt out. And now I can see how having those specific, achievable goals really prevents that overwhelming feeling.
Exactly. It's great to hear that. And the third tip is to practice self-compassion. Many people procrastinate because they feel guilty about it, but guilt just makes the problem worse. When you procrastinate, instead of criticizing yourself, try to understand why you're avoiding the task. Are you afraid of failure? Are you unsure of how to begin? Understanding those emotions and treating yourself with compassion are ways that can help you push through the procrastination cycle so you don't get forever stuck in a shame cycle.
Such a great point. It's very easy to beat yourself up over this, but the kindness could actually make it easier to move forward.
You got the point, Mark. Procrastination is a habit and breaking habits takes time. So be patient with yourself and focus on progress, not perfection.
I love that advice, Dr. Miller. And I think the last piece you mentioned about accountability is key too. Sometimes having someone to check in with can really help you stay committed.
Correct. Sharing your goals with a close friend, colleague, or even a mentor can create a sense of accountability. If someone else is aware of your goals, then it's much harder to avoid them. Plus, it can be really motivating to have someone else encouraging you along the way.
Wonderful. So, in summary, procrastination often is a result of emotional avoidance, fear of failure, anxiety, and perfectionism. Breaking tasks into smaller pieces, having clear goals, using techniques such as the Pomodoro Technique, and practicing self-compassion and accountability can help start to break the cycle and get more done.
Exactly. And remember, no human is perfect. It's about making progress, not being perfect.
Gosh, I learned so much today. Thank you so much for your time today, Doctor. These tips are incredibly helpful, and I'm sure they'll help our listeners overcome procrastination and become more productive.
It was my pleasure, Mark. I hope these strategies help everyone take the first step toward getting things done.
And a special thank you to all the listeners of the ASA English podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, do not forget to subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave us a comment. Make sure to watch the vocabulary section so you understand the topic completely and improve your English skills. Until next time, keep improving your English and your productivity. Procrastination, the act of delaying or postponing tasks or actions, often due to a desire to avoid discomfort or difficulty. Example: he kept procrastinating on his work project, choosing to relax instead of meeting the deadline. Perfectionism, a tendency to strive for flawlessness, often setting unrealistically high standards that can lead to stress and delay in completing tasks. Example: her perfectionism prevented her from finishing her art project because she was constantly adjusting tiny details. Instant gratification, the desire for immediate pleasure or satisfaction, often at the expense of long-term goals or responsibilities. Example: she opted for instant gratification by watching TV instead of working on her presentation, knowing that it would delay her progress. Burnout, a state of mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion caused by prolonged stress or overwork, leading to decreased motivation and productivity. Example: after weeks of non-stop work, he felt a deep sense of burnout and struggled to find the energy to complete his tasks. Overwhelming, so intense, large, or complex that it is difficult to manage or cope with. Example: the overwhelming amount of research for his thesis made him feel paralyzed and unsure of how to start. Achievable, something that is realistically possible or attainable within a given time frame or set of conditions. Example: she set an achievable goal to write 500 words each day, which helped her stay on track with her novel. Accountability, the obligation to explain or justify one's actions to someone else, often creating a sense of responsibility and motivation to complete tasks. Example, his accountability partner checked in with him daily, ensuring that he stayed focused on his goals and deadlines. Self-compassion, treating oneself with kindness, understanding, and patience, especially when facing challenges or failure. Example, after missing his deadline, he practiced self-compassion by reminding himself that everyone makes mistakes, and he could try again tomorrow. Discomfort, a feeling of physical or emotional unease or distress, often resulting from a difficult situation or task. Example, he felt a sense of discomfort when faced with the task of speaking in front of a large audience, but he pushed through it. Approachable, easy to approach, reach, or deal with, something that feels manageable or not overwhelming. Example, by breaking the large project into smaller, more approachable tasks, she was able to make steady progress without feeling stressed.